take away your phone. Take away the lamp on your nightstand, the street light outside your window, the TV. Now it's dark. Dark like the inside of a closed hand. You have 11 hours until the sun comes back. You can't read, you can't scroll, you can't see the person lying next to you. So what do? For almost all of human history, this wasn't a thought experiment. This was every single evening. And what people actually did in those hours is stranger and honestly more useful to you than anything they did during the day. Here's what almost nobody accounts for. We talk about prehistoric life as if it were all daylight, hunting, gathering, making tools. But at the latitude where most early humans ended up, the winter night runs 11, 12, sometimes 14 hours. That's not a gap between 2 days. That's half your life. If you lived 30 years, you spent roughly 11 of them in the dark. So the real question isn't what ancient humans did all day. We know that. The question nobody asks is what they did with the other half. The first surprise comes from a historian, not an archaeologist. In 2001, a historian at Virginia Tech named Roger Ekirch published a study, the result of 16 years digging through diaries, court records, medical manuals, plays, and letters from pre-industrial Europe. He wasn't looking for anything about sleep, he just kept tripping over it. Again and again, in documents with no connection to each other, he found the same two phrases, first sleep and second sleep. Not sleep, there are two of them, each with its own name, and they're used in passing, the same way you say breakfast with no explanation, because the reader already knows what it means. He found more than 500 such references. In English, French, Italian, Latin. A medical manual recommending the hours between the two sleeps as the best time to conceive a child. Court testimony where witness dates a crime to after first sleep. Chaucer. A prayer book with prayers written specifically for the middle of the night. Before artificial light, people didn't sleep in one block. They slept in two. And between them, there was a stretch of 1 to 3 hours where a person was simply awake in the dark, on purpose, every night. In England, it had a name, the watch. In France, dorver, a word that roughly means sleep-waking. Now, some of you are thinking, this is just old writers being poetic. Fair, I thought so too. Except somebody tested it. In the early 90s, a psychiatrist at the National Institute of Mental Health, named Thomas Ware, ran an experiment that sounds almost laughably simple. He took a group of volunteers, put them in a room, and gave them 14 hours of darkness every night. No lamps, no screens, nothing but the option of lying there. And he kept it up for a month. For the first couple of weeks, they slept enormously, paying off years of accumulated debt. And then something clicked into place. Their sleep split in two. About 4 hours, then 1 to 3 hours of quiet wakefulness, then another 4 hours. Exactly the pattern Ekirch had found in court records 400 years old. Nobody told them to do it. Their bodies did it on their own. Ware took their blood during that middle stretch and found elevated prolactin, a hormone that rises during meditation, during nursing, in states of deep calm. The volunteers described it themselves. Not insomnia, not boredom, something closer to floating. They were awake in the middle of the night, and it felt good. You've almost certainly experienced the first half of this. You wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning, and you panic. You check the time, you count how many hours are left, you tell yourself you're going to be wrecked tomorrow. Your ancestors woke up at exactly the same hour. It just never occurred to them that anything was wrong. So what did they do with those hours? In 2014, an anthropologist named Polly Weissner published a paper in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences that I think about constantly. She had spent decades with the Zuhwasi in Botswana, and she did something nobody had thought to do. She recorded their conversations and then sorted them by time of day. 174 conversations. The daytime ones were exactly what you'd expect, where the animals were seen, which plants were ready, who isn't sharing fairly. Roughly a third of all daytime talk was criticism and conflict, and only about 6% was stories. Then the sun would go down, the fire got lit, and the same people, in the same group, on the same day, started talking about completely different things. At night, 81% of conversation was stories. Not gossip, not logistics, stories. Myths about how the world began, ancestors who did the impossible, someone's grandfather who reached a place none of them had ever seen. Jokes, people imitating each other while everyone falls apart laughing. Long, detailed accounts of people in distant camps, relatives none of them would meet for years. Wiesner argues that this is where human culture was actually manufactured. Because you can't think about gods while you're tracking an antelope. You can't imagine a place you've never been while you're checking whether the berries are ripe. Thoughts like that need a specific set of conditions. Your stomach is full, you're safe, you can see faces lit from below, and for the next 4 hours you have absolutely nothing to do. Fire didn't just keep predators away. Fire built a room. And everything we now call religion, myth, music, and imagination was invented inside that room, by tired people with nowhere to go. There's one more thing, and it may be the most personally useful fact in this whole video. In 2017, a team led by an anthropologist named David Sampson published a study in Proceedings of the Royal Society B. They put activity monitors on 33 Hadza adults in Tanzania, people who sleep outdoors, as a group, with no walls, and recorded them for 20 days. They ended up with 220 hours of sleep data, and they went looking for the moments when everyone in camp was asleep at the same time. They found 18 minutes. Out of 220 hours, across 20 nights. On average, at any given moment in the night, more than a third of the camp was awake. Nobody assigned shifts. Nobody stood guard. It happened because the group contained people with different internal clocks. The older ones fell asleep early and woke at 3 or 4. The younger ones stayed up late. The gap between them covered the entire night automatically, and not one person volunteered for it. Researchers call this the Sentinel hypothesis. A group of humans sleeping outdoors is never left unguarded, not because anyone organized it, but because human sleep is deliberately badly synchronized. Which means what your grandfather does, up at 4:30 with no alarm, unable to sleep past dawn, isn't decline. It's a job, the oldest job there is, and he inherited it. And it means those 2 hours you spend awake at 3 in the morning, staring at the ceiling and furious with yourself. You're not broken. You're on shift. There's just nobody left in the camp to relieve you. So here's what that night looks like. The sun sets around 6. There's nothing to be done about it, so nobody tries. The fire gets built up. People finish what's left from the day, and then they simply sit. For 3 or 4 hours they talk. Not about tomorrow, about the dead, about the beginning of the world, about a man 2 valleys over who did something ridiculous. Children fall asleep leaning against adults mid-sentence. Nobody moves them. Somewhere around 9 or 10, people lie down where they were sitting. First, sleep. Then, closer to midnight, you open your eyes. The fire is low and orange. You're not alarmed. This is simply the middle of the night, the same way noon is the middle of the day. Someone else is awake on the other side of the fire. You wake at dawn, having spent 8 hours unconscious and 2 conscious. And those 2 hours don't feel lost to you. They feel like the quietest part of your life. And then we lit up the world. Gas lamps in the streets in the early 1800s. Edison's bulb in 1879. And in a little over a century, the cost of an hour of artificial light collapsed by a factor of thousands, from something you rationed to something you never think about. And the night just got shorter. Not astronomically, commercially. Evening turned into time you could sell, fill, and monetize. Segmented sleep vanished so completely that within 2 generations, waking at 2 in the morning stopped being normal and became a symptom. We gave it a clinical name. We started treating it. You fall asleep to a screen. They fell asleep to a story told out loud. You wake at 3 in the morning and call it a disorder. They woke at 3 in the morning and called it the watch. You spend the evening consuming what other people made. They spent it making what we still tell. You have never in your life been bored for 4 hours straight. They were bored for 4 hours every night. And out of that boredom came gods, music, myth, and every story you've ever loved. We didn't just light up the night. We filled it. And we filled it so completely that we lost the only hours a human being ever had. The hours when nothing was expected of us. Your body still remembers. That's why it wakes you at 3. It's still waiting for the fire.